Let's talk about the power of hot cocoa, the multiplying force of pulleys, and the inevitability of time. Welcome to the Time Treadmill. I'm Ron, and these are my sweaty thoughts about Doctor Who. This morning I finished watching The Aztecs, and I wanted to talk about a few things. First of all, I love the subplot involving the Doctor and a woman he inadvertently becomes engaged to. You see, he spends a significant amount of the story spending time in a garden at the base of the pyramid that houses the tomb of Yetaxa. And while he's in this garden, he befriends an older Aztec woman. And when I say older, I basically mean barely middle-aged, which I guess in television terms is ancient. So, for the Doctor's part, he's mostly trying to befriend her in order to pump her for information on how he might gain access to the tomb of Yetaxa. Along the way, he accidentally causes her to spill a cup full of cocoa beans, and in the ensuing conversation, asks for them to share a cup of cocoa together. What he doesn't realize is that is, in effect, a wedding proposal. She's delighted, he's mortified. It's a delightful subplot, and the only other thing I'll say about that is my wife makes an amazing salted caramel hot cocoa. I love you, honey. More than Barbara Wright, even. The next thing I wanted to talk about in this story is to reiterate once again that this is, at its heart, an educational program for children. And one of the cool things this story does is demonstrate the power of a pulley system and a block and tackle. You see, the tomb of Yetaxa is sealed from the inside by a slab of stone that sits on a hinge. It's impossible to pull open from the outside, although through a series of plot points, Ian manages to attach a rope to an anchor point above the pivot point on the slab, coming out through the underside. But even with the strength of all four of our lead characters, they are not able to lift the stone. It's too heavy. And the Doctor, being a scientist, knows that what he needs to do is create a pulley. And so he spends a chunk of the story hand carving a pulley and then setting that up outside the tomb so that the four of them can, at the climactic moment of the story, actually open the tomb of Yetaxa through the multiplying force of a pulley. It is a great piece of educational science worked masterfully into the story. And again, I have to reiterate how much I love John Lucarati's writing, not only in this story, but of course in Marco Polo and in an upcoming story. He is able to masterfully weave all of the requirements of the story, not only to serve the necessary plot points of the story itself, but also to meet the needs of the production. Case in point, 2 of the episodes here are again ones where a major character takes a vacation. In this case, it's Susan, and the story is structured in such a way that Carol Ann Ford was able to shoot 2 short scenes during the first week of filming that have her in a separate location with none of the other lead characters, and those 2 scenes she shot were able to be used in the 2nd and 3rd episodes, thus giving her, the actress, 2 weeks off for vacation without removing Susan from the story. It's just a great bit of functional writing, and it demonstrates why writing screenplays is exponentially more difficult than writing a novel. And that leads me to my final point in this story, which is the inevitability of time and history. The entire struggle of this story, aside from the moment-to-moment conflicts, is Barbara's emotional journey from knowing the history of the Aztecs, and indeed their near future, and wanting to do everything in her power to avert that tragedy, and ultimately not being able to. She does manage to save one person, and that has to be enough, because the final scene of the story has our heroes escaping into the TARDIS, and in the end, the High Priest does commit his human sacrifice in the darkness of the eclipse to appease the Sun God. It is a necessary bit of writing, and I applaud this kind of storytelling directed at children that does not sugarcoat things, that does not gloss over potentially distressing things about life, but instead trusts them and trusts their parents to be able to process these kind of things. It's one of the beauties of Doctor Who and why I adore this show so much. And that's all I have for you today. Tomorrow, I get to meet the forefathers of the Ood. Ooh.